New York, New York, the greatest city in the world. And tonight, for the first time in 27 years, 1999, the Knicks are playing in the NBA Finals. Let me put that into perspective. The last time the Knicks were here in 1999, I wasn't even born. Patrick Ewing was limping up and down the floor, and Latrell Sprewell was making one of the most improbable runs in playoff history. And a DJ at the bar somewhere in the Bronx was blasting Prince because you had to party like it was 1999. Well, guess what? The Knicks are back, and the DJ is still playing that song. Tonight, Jalen Brunson, a second round pick, a 33rd overall selection. The guy that was said to be too small and too slow steps onto an NBA Finals court for the first time in his career. He averaged 26.9 points and 6.6 assists this postseason. He won Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He dropped 38 points in an overtime road game against Cleveland like it was nothing. He joins Kobe Bryant in 2001 and Steph Curry in 2017 as the only players in NBA history to average 26 points and 6 assists during an 11-game postseason winning streak. You know what those other teams did? They won the championship. And yes, Vegas has the Spurs at minus 195. Yes, Victor Wembanyama is averaging 30 points and 14 rebounds against the Knicks in his career. Yes, the models say San Antonio wins 63.7% of the time. I don't care. This Knicks team has a historic plus 20 net rating through their first 10 playoff games, the highest by any team since 1978. They swept Philadelphia by a combined 75 points. They swept Cleveland by a combined 117 points. Nobody sweeps two teams in the same postseason and gets there by accident. Welcome to Landon's Locker Room. I've got the full finals preview, an MLB hitting crisis deep dive, 5 something or nothing topics, or 4, my apologies, Landon's list of the top 5 players in this upcoming NBA Finals with a full breakdown on every single one and my championship pick at the end. No guess, my apologies. Power went out. No debate, so you're just going to have to hear me. Just takes, stats, and truth. Let's get into it. So obviously, Knicks taking on the Spurs in the NBA Finals. Um, Rematch of the 1999 NBA Finals, as I mentioned at the start. Only Knicks become the fourth team in NBA history with multiple series clinching wins of 30 plus points in the postseason, joining the 2025 Thunder, who won the championship, 2008 Celtics, also won the championship, and 1987 Lakers. Very great company for this New York Knicks team. Can't overstate that. And then you look at that Eastern Conference championship for the Knicks. Brunson went off for 38 points in game 1 in that incredible comeback. I didn't even get to watch, but it was awesome to follow along and see what was going on. Game 2, Brunson yet again was key, but the Knicks bench key throughout that whole Eastern Conference Finals really showed up in game 2. They outscored Cleveland's bench by 22, led by Landry Shamet. And then in game 3, Knicks really dominated, put the series on ice, Brunson dropping 30. And then game 4, obviously you have that 37-point blowout for the Knicks. The statement game, 49% field goal percentage, 44.2% from 3, 20 offensive rebounds, 58 bench points, Cat 8 for 11 from the field, 3 for 3 from 3, 19 points, 14 rebounds. Brunson, you looking at Eastern Conference Finals, obviously your Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He averaged 25 and a half points, 7.8 assists per game, 48 0.7 from the field. He won the Larry Bird Trophy unanimously. And then on the other side, you look at the Western Conference Finals. The Spurs came back. Sorry, that's my dog. Spurs came back from 3-1 down against the number 1 seed OKC Thunder, only the 13th team in NBA history to do that. Sorry if you guys hear my dog. The Thunder had the best record in the league at 62-20. Shea Julius Alexander was the MVP, won the MVP, but could not come through in that Western Conference Finals. They would have been a big hassle for the Knicks, in my opinion. I know a lot of people are talking about the fact that the Spurs might be the worst case scenario. I disagree. I'm on the opposite side of that spectrum. I personally believe that the Knicks can handle the Spurs. I'll have my finals prediction. I'll have my finals prediction at the end of this episode. Maybe my dogs too. Who knows at this point? He's been barking way too much right now. I apologize for that. But where was I? Yeah. So obviously, you look at this matchup for the Knicks. I think they could handle the Spurs. They proved they can in the regular season. I know OKC was banged up and all of that, but I do believe that the Knicks have a better matchup with the Spurs. Western Wemby was the Western Conference Finals MVP, had 25.6 points, 8.1 rebounds per game, 2 blocks per game, the most important player on the floor every single game. This guy, Wemby, really proving that he's one of the best players in the entire NBA. You look at the odds, Knicks versus Spurs tonight in San Antonio. Buddy, relax. I know, NBA Finals tonight. You look at the matchup, minus 195. That's the odds that come in for tonight, favored for the Spurs. They're the home team. Tonight at 8:30. Don't know why I put 8 p.m. on the bar. My apologies. That's probably going to be an error throughout the video. All the Eastern Conference Final games were 8, but I forgot. Finals 8:30 on ABC. But you look at this, Spurs are a great team, but personally, I think that the Spurs do not deserve to be favored. This line is completely disrespectful to the New York Knicks. Mentioned their 20 plus 20 playoff rating is the best since 1978, similar to the 1987 Lakers. Mentioned the company that the Knicks are in. Only Kobe 2001 and Steph 2017 are doing what Jalen Brunson did. And you talk about that bench production, 58 bench points in that closeout game against Cleveland. Knicks brought in Mike Brown to use more of the bench, and he's definitely done that, and he's got the best out of his bench players. Seeding gap, obviously Spurs are the 2 seed, Knicks are the 3. But why the minus 195 exists? You got to look at that side. Got to be fair to both sides. Wembanyama is statistically one of the most dominant players in this series, 26.8 points per game, 11.2 rebounds. 30.4 points per game career against the Knicks is absolutely phenomenal. But the Knicks have been able to be competitive in those games, only losing by 2 points in the one game that they did lose this year against the Spurs. Obviously, the big thing, games 1 and 2 in San Antonio and not the Garden, might be a little bit of a problem for this Knicks team that has been reliant on their Garden success. Obviously, the pushback being, the Spurs are the best team in the West, coming off of that comeback they had in the Western Conference Finals. The Knicks, really, they outscored their first 2 opponents combined by 192. And when you look at these, stats head to head of the Spurs and the Knicks in the playoffs specifically, because you talk about the playoffs, and historically success has come off the back of who is the hottest team, who is the hottest at this time going into the finals, and that is the New York Knicks. You look at the 2026 playoff stats, 119 points per game for the Knicks, 51.5 field goal percentage, 40% three-point efficient field goal percentage of 59.2. The only thing that the Spurs are beating the Knicks in is that rebounding margin at 47.3. Obviously, because they have the 7-foot demon in Victor Wembanyama being a big reason for that. But you talk about who's the hottest team, which team is the most dominant in this playoffs? It is the Knicks. So the fact that they are uh, underdogs, but not only underdogs, but minus 195 for the Spurs to win is completely disrespectful for this Knicks team that is on an absolutely historic run going into this NBA Finals. And it's a historic championship for New York City that hasn't had a championship win since 2012 when the New York Giants won the Super Bowl. Obviously, there's been some disappointments in between. You talk about the 2014 Stanley Cup for the New York Rangers. You could talk about the 2024 World Series for the Yankees. It's a lot of failure in between. This finals means a lot for New York. But obviously, there's a 7-foot demon standing in the way of the Knicks, being Victor Wembanyama. And the question a lot of people are asking around the NBA, can the Knicks actually stop the guy making them the favorites? Can they stop Victor Wembanyama? Because I'm going to tell you right now, I actually think they can, and the numbers kind of back me up, or that they don't really need to contain Wemby to be successful in this finals run. So you look at Wembanyama's career versus the Knicks. He's averaging almost 30 and a half points, 14.6 rebounds per game, 3.2 assists per game, 5 games. That's a very dominant stat line for any player against any single team. And you look at the 2025-2026 regular season head-to-head in specific, 26.8 points per game, 11.2 rebounds a game, 3.8 assists, 2.1 steals, 3.4 blocks. Led the NBA in blocks for the second straight year. He's always a demon in that category. And then you look how that compares to the Knicks star in Jalen Brunson. And Brunson has been able to match or even beat Wembanyama in some of these stats in 2026 in those head-to-head matchups specifically. So points, yes, Wembanyama has the edge. Rebounds, obviously he does, but assists, Jalen Brunson has a massive edge at 7.7. And you look at the plus minus, that's the thing that really stands out. Wembanyama has a negative 5.3. So yes, he's been able to produce, but hasn't really been effective on the court with his production. While Jalen Brunson has a plus 6.7 plus minus. So two great players going head to head in the NBA Finals. The Knicks have proved, at least this season, that they can match Wemby and kind of make his performance irrelevant. I think you got to hold him to under 26 points per game. I think that's the sweet margin for the Knicks against Wembanyama. Um, just a great player that obviously is gonna cause a lot of trouble for the Knicks. But you look back at the NBA Cup championship in specific in December, Wembanyama played very well, but the Knicks still won that game. And that's because, like I mentioned, the Knicks don't really have to contain Wembanyama. They just have to make his production not matter as much. And you point back to that plus minus percentage number being the biggest standout there. I think you could maybe even foul trouble is a real weapon. You know, Wemby drew 7 fouls in the Western Conference Finals, Game 7. Cat's a guy that has been in foul trouble in the past. He had 4 fouls going into the third quarter of the Eastern Conference Finals, Game 4. So you look at that and you look at how dangerous Wemby is at drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line, similar to the way Shea is. You can't deny that that might pose an issue. And Mitchell Robinson, you know, yes, he has the whole hamate injury. Going to talk about that a little bit later. He averaged 4.2 offensive rebounds per game this season, fourth in the league. He's going to be key in whether or not Wemby's able to reach the level of where his performance can hurt the Knicks. You know, you talk about that supporting cast around Wemby. I really think that's going to be the difference. Um, you know, you have to force Wemby to get content with shooting the 3-pointer. You have to get him content with shooting from mid range. You have to make sure that he doesn't get comfortable in getting to the rim and getting the dunks down, because once he gets comfortable with that, that's when teams get in real trouble with Wembanyama. You might be asking, can anyone on your roster actually stop him? And I think yes. And I just really told you exactly how the Knicks are able to do it. You just look at the past numbers. But now, let me ask you a different question. Does a finals win cement Jalen Brunson as the greatest Knick of all time? The numbers say he's already knocking on the door. I think a championship would really blow it wide open in the case for Jalen Brunson becoming the greatest Knick of all time. And let me start this off by saying I have an apology to make to the New York Knicks, to Jalen Brunson in the specific. I went on air on Iona University television and said the Knicks would not make it past the first round. The Knicks, boy, they have proven me wrong, and then some, making their way to the NBA Finals for the first time in 27 years. All credit to Mike Brown and Jalen Brunson in specific, who I have been on record of saying can't be counted on as a 1A type player. And I think that rhetoric has changed, at least in my eyes. Jalen Brunson is a 1A. He is one of, or if not the best player in the finals. We're going to get into that a little bit later. My top five finals players coming up soon. But looking at Jalen Brunson in specific, Brunson, you look, I think when you talk about Jalen Brunson, you can't just talk about the stats alone. You have to talk about what he's brought to the Knicks in specific. The Knicks were in a generational period of losing from 2002 to 2022. You look at the numbers, they had a 402 win percentage. They only won 50 games one time with Carmelo Anthony. They had 8 playoff wins, no finals appearances. And then when Jalen Brunson came here, one of the only stars that would come to New York from 2022 to 2026, the Knicks have a 613 win percentage. They've won 50 games 3 times. They have 35 playoff wins. And yes, they have made the finals for the first time in 27 years. So looking at what Jalen Brunson has done for the Knicks, it's really undeniable that he's brought winning back to the Garden. He's brought winning back for the Knicks. He ranks top 3 in franchise history in playoff points and assists in just 4 seasons with the team. 3 All-Star selections, 3 All-NBA selections, Eastern Conference Finals MVP, NBA Clutch Player of the Year in 2025. And he's only 29. And you look at Patrick Ewing, 11 All-Stars, never won a championship. With a title, Brunson eclipses everything Ewing built over 15 years. The only argument really is Clyde Frazier, who has those 2 rings. He really is the GOAT baseline. I don't know if Jalen Brunson is the greatest Knick of all time with a finals win, but he's definitely the second. I think that Clyde Frazier still, he is the epitome of being the greatest Knick. And I think the greatest Knick debate is not settled with a win, but Jalen Brunson can start to build that debate even more, start to build his resume as a Knick as he heads uh, past the finals. Major League Baseball has a problem, and I'm about to tell you exactly what it is and how to fix it. So, we're making a hard left turn from basketball to baseball, garden to the grass, from the NBA Finals to the national pastime. And I have to tell you, the national pastime has a problem. Through the first half of the 2026 MLB season, the league is hitting a collective 240 batting average, .318 on base, .388 slugging, an OPS of 706, and 8.38 strikeouts per game. Those are the numbers. Let me tell you what those numbers mean. They mean that more than a third of the at-bats end without the ball leaving the infield. They mean that the middle of the order is striking out at historic rates. They mean the most beautiful play in baseball, the line drive single up the middle, the opposite field double, and the gap is disappearing. We're watching the game become a 3 outcome sport: home run, strikeout, or walk. And what I fell in love with is slowly disappearing. The OPS is down 13 points from last year. The batting average is down 5 points. 5 points sounds small until you multiply it across 30 teams, 162 games each, and realize you're talking about tens of thousands of fewer hits across the season. Fewer hits means fewer base runners. Fewer base runners means fewer rallies. Fewer rally means, let's be honest, fewer people watching. So today we're asking the question Major League Baseball needs to answer: is there a hitting problem and what to do about it? Yeah, I'd say the stats say, yeah, there's a problem, but is it a crisis? I think the numbers don't lie, and I've got a few opinions about who's responsible and how to fix it. Obviously, we've talked about some of the numbers for this year's hitting across the league. The analytical revolution, I think, has a lot to do with everything that's wrong with baseball. Every team now employs a full analytics staff telling hitters to optimize exit velocity and launch angle, and the result has been more pull heavy swings, more strikeouts, fewer balls in play. Smart for individuals, terrible for the product of Major League Baseball. And then you top that with pitchers have never been better. You look at a pitcher like Paul Skeens, Jacob Mizorowski, 100-mile-per-hour fastball is now table stakes in any MLB rotation. Spin rates, movement profiles, sequencing. It's an arms race that hitters simply cannot keep up with without changing their approach. The launch angle era, you talk about all of this, the pitchers, the analytics. It's really led to this launch angle favored mindset. And when the game rewarded power over contact for a decade, organizations stopped developing these contact style hitters. That's a pipeline problem. The farms aren't producing 290 hitters because nobody asked for them. And let's take a look at where this year's MLB stats rank. Deep dive into the stats. You look at the batting average. This dates back all the way to 1871. The league is batting 241. If that ranks 154th all time, that is amongst the lowest of all time, 154, and that is even lower than some of the dead ball era years where we saw the lowest batting averages of all time. And then OPS, mentioned it's down from last year, is in the middle of the pack all time, ranks 83 at 710. Runs per game at 4.43 is towards the lower end at 96. And strikeouts per game, they rank high end, which is not a good thing, at 8.33. That's 10th all time. The only thing they're top 10 in. And home runs per game at 1.08 is at 17. So really a home run or bust type of environment for the MLB this year. And look, I know there's a lot of arguments of pitching has always been evolved. This is part of the natural cycle. Um, Offense will come back. Look, that argument I think worked in the 80s and 90s, but the 2026 hitting numbers are lower than 2024, which were lower than 2022. This isn't a cycle. This is structural decline for the MLB driven by analytics optimizing for three major outcomes: the home run, strikeout, and walk. A lot of people say that, the strikeouts don't matter. Defense is more exciting than balls in play. Anyway, look, you look at the ratings across the TV ratings for the MLB this year. Obviously a little difficult when you throw streaming into it, but games with more balls in play have higher engagement metric. Casual fans don't watch to see a strikeout; they watch to see the diving catch, the throwing error, the hit and run. Every strikeout eliminates three defensive players from making a play. Less action just equals less engagement. They're letting the 240 batting average really just hang around across the league, and it's causing just, these streaky teams. You look across the MLB this year, and there's no one real dominant team. No team is taking the league by storm. I guess you could say the Braves, who were the first team to 40 wins, but even that team has holes, and a lot of it stems back to the hitting side of it, where hitting has become absorbed into those three major outcomes, has caused for a very dull game, in my opinion. And then you move to how do you fix hitting in the MLB? And honestly, the current state teams routinely carry 13, 14 pitchers. That means managers can deploy a lefty righty specialist for every single hitter. I know there's the three batter rule, but there is still that matchup type of approach. You look at the Yankees, they platoon a lot. Paul Goldschmidt, Ben Rice, lefty righty. The fix, mandate a maximum of 10 pitchers on the active roster, force teams to carry more position players, or you just expand the rosters in general. I think we see a plethora of injuries every year. I think it's called for an expanded roster for a while. I think that more pitchers are used every day. So I think that has mandated, more expanded rosters, could see more rest in these players produce the better outcomes across the league. You talk about the league expanding. That would be very bad for the league right now because it would just make the talent pool even thinner. So it would make superstar players rarer on each team. You'd really only have one superstar. You wouldn't really be able to have two. And two is even rare now when you think about it across the league. The Dodgers really being the outlier, have all those stars out there on the West Coast. But if you're going to expand, you 100% have to increase the rosters because there's going to be more opponents, so much travel all the time, playing every team. The players are getting really tired. They have to expand the rosters. And then number two, I think you have to stop being home run happy if you want to fix hitting in the MLB. A 320 hitter who gets on base 37% of the time is more valuable in a baseball context than a 250 30 home run hitter. I don't care what the WAR says. I don't care what the major analytics say. I love stats. I love analytics, but it has really ruined uh, the consistent hitting numbers of the major leagues, and the stats back it up. It's going down year in and year out. It has really been a detriment to the sport, but it's not that hard to fix. I think just two things, that's it. Two things that could fix this sport. Expand the rosters and stop being so home run happy. Moving through a segment we like to call Something or Nothing over here on Landon's Locker Room. Giving a verdict, backed with an argument, hit the debate topics, give you the verdict, something or nothing. So basically, you're going to propose whether or not a topic means anything. Something that may, on the surface, looks like it means something might actually not mean something, and vice versa. So the first one we have is something or nothing. Mitchell Robinson suffers a fractured pinky, which actually is now they're saying a broken hamate. So pinky is this, hamate is over here. But Mitchell Robinson showed up to practice wearing nothing, so I don't think it's really a big deal that Mitchell Robinson has this small injury. And I've been talking to people around sports media, and everyone I think has said the same thing. If there is one player that doesn't need their pinky, it is Mitchell Robinson. Um, Yes, he had surgery. That sounds like it's a big deal. The fastest NBA return from a surgically repaired pinky fracture since 2005 is 14 days. Mitch had roughly 7 to 8 days. He's racing that timeline to get back. Obviously, he fully plans to play tonight. There has been no news that came out that indicates otherwise. And you look at what Mitch has done in the regular season, he's been a huge part as to what made this Knicks team so successful, shooting 72.3% from the field. His job is to just catch and lob the dunks, and he's been doing that perfectly. Offensive rebounding, 4.2 per game. That's fourth in the entire NBA, and that's going to be huge against this Spurs team. So, yes, having a detriment like a broken pinky or hammy, whatever you want to call it, on the surface seems like a lot, especially with those numbers. But the thing that really stands out is what I said first is Mitch is there to just do the catch and lob, to just get it and dunk it in, and he's been good at that all year. A broken hammy is not gonna hurt him from doing that. And you look at his playoff line, 5.3 points per game. Yes, he's not shooting much, and he's still been huge in these Knicks playoff wins. 5.5 rebounds per game in 14.2 minutes. But in game 4 closeout against Cleveland, he had 10 rebounds in 18 minutes. So he really just needs to do his job and get those rebounds. I don't think a broken pinky is going to hurt that. So I'm going to say nothing on Mitchell Robinson's pinky. Moving on. Odell Beckham Jr. resigns with the Giants, something or nothing. I'm going to start off with saying this is just huge for 12-year-old me. Back in 2016, 2017, OBJ was everything here in New York. People were getting frosted tips just because of OBJ. Back in 2016, he had officially signed with the Giants June 1st, 2026, 8 years after being traded to Cleveland in 2019. He is 33 years old. He did not play in 2025, served that 6-game suspension for failing a PED test. Then no NFL team wanted to give him a deal, although he even had rumblings of coming back to the Giants last year, but wasn't worth it because Giants didn't really need anyone because they weren't competing. And you talk about history that OBJ has with the Giants. He has history with the new coach, John Harbaugh. In 2023, he was in Baltimore under John Harbaugh, 35 catches, 565 yards, 3 TDs. That's a useful wide receiver. He's not going to be wide receiver one. Yes, I understand Malik Neighbors' knee is, I don't even know. It's all torn up. But this is really a full circle moment. OBJ was drafted 12th overall by the Giants in 2014. He's publicly stated that he never wanted to leave, and now he's back. You know, you look at his Giants career, 390 receptions, 5,476 yards, 44 touchdowns in just 59 games. That's a 92.8 receiving yards per game. That's the highest of any Giants player with 50-plus games. And his 1,300-yard seasons in his first 5 years at his peak. He was an electric wide receiver in all of football. Yeah, and OBJ made the one-handed catch in the Fanatics flag football game, if that means anything to anyone. But let's do a reality check here. Giants were 4-13 last season. They were not a playoff team with OBJ besides in 2016, and OBJ was able to do nothing. Harbaugh's own words, he still thinks OBJ has more juice. It's not going to be the old Odell. The coach is already tempering expectations at the signing. Look, it's not inspiring confidence to Giants fans. His role is really to just be that depth receiver. They also signed Juju Smith-Schuster and Braxton Berrios that same day. So there's a lot of competition in that wide receiver room. It's still yet to be seen if OBJ is going to make the team. So I'm going to have to say nothing on Odell Beckham Jr. re-signing with the Giants, but something for 12-year-old me. Moving on. Something or nothing. NBA passes the new anti-tanking rule. Lottery has expanded from 14 to 16 teams. The play-in losers of the 7 and 8 seed now enter the lottery. So even teams that competed in the postseason are now going to be getting a pick. And you look at the ball distribution, each team gets 3, 2, or 1 lottery balls depending on the finish. Play-in losers get 1 ball, seeds 9 through 10, play-in entry get 2 balls, non-playoff and non-bottom 3 teams get 3 balls. The big change is the draft regulation zone. Bottom three teams lose a ball, two instead of three, 4.4% odds versus 8.1% for teams that finish 4th to 10th worst. Under old rules, bottom teams had 14% shot at number one. Now they have the worst odds in the entire lottery. 71% chance the number one pick goes to a team finishing 6th to 12th worst. That's revolutionary when you look at the grand scheme of things in the NBA. You look at one of the teams in the finals, the Spurs, that abused the lottery in the past, not going to be able to do that anymore in the NBA because of this format. And why this is something to me, the tanking epidemic was real. This season, the Utah Jazz were fined $500,000 because they bench healthy stars in winnable games to boost the lottery odds for the loaded 2026 draft class. The Indiana Pacers were also fined $170,000 for the same thing. The NBA literally had teams trying to lose on national televisions. Fans were paying $200 per ticket to watch teams tank. The league had to do something. I think this is perfect. Under the old rules, the Washington Wizards, who own the number one pick this year, had 14% chance at number one. Under the new system, they would have 4.4%, less than 7 other teams. And this playing inclusion really creates incentive. Teams fighting for the 7 to 8 seed now have lottery implications too. Every win has a value through April. I think there's definitely going to be some criticism on this. Not all bad teams tank. Some are just bad because of injuries or rebuilds. And under these new rules, San Antonio would not have been able to draft Dylan Harper number 2 overall after drafting Wemby number 1. The consecutive pick restriction blocks back-to-back top picks. Memphis voted no, specifically because it devalues the Utah pick they received in the Jaren Jackson deal. So that's pretty bad there as to what it does, because teams that have already made trades, now those picks are going to be devalued. Um, so that's not good. And then another argument against this is this punishes rebuilding teams that are genuinely bad, not tanking. The Wizards, Hornets, Jazz tank intentionally, but so do teams just legitimately going through a rebuild. I would point to the Brooklyn Nets for that. They don't really deliberately tank. They are just a bad team. And they somehow got the 6th pick this year. I think they should have gotten a lot higher of a pick this year because they didn't tank when they could have. And yeah, I obviously mentioned that San Antonio drafted Wemby number 1 and 2. That's one of the most entertaining teams in the NBA, but that should not be happening. San Antonio was a 22-win team. They weren't tanking. They were rebuilding after Tim Duncan's era. So really, they would kind of work into this new identity of the NBA and tanking. So I'm going to say this is something. I think it's going to stop tanking a lot moving forward. And moving back to the diamond, something or nothing, MLB has proposed a hard cap, a cap of $245.3 million and a floor of $171.2 million. I think that this could be something, but not in a good way. This is something in a really bad way because there's no way that $245 million is going to be approved as a cap. There's no way. This puts the 2027 season in jeopardy. The current CBA expires December 2026. Obviously, this is some preliminary discussions that the MLB is having. There goes my dog again. He's not happy about this either. And obviously, this has shades of 1994. In 1994, owners proposed salary cap, and then the players went on strike. No World Series, 2 months of games canceled. The sport took a decade to recover. Like, this is very, very bad. It is something, but not in the good way. For the cap, it creates a competitive balance. I do think you look at the Dodgers, a cap of some sort is needed. I do think 245 is way too low. What I do like is the $171 million floor. I will say that. I'll say I like that. I like that the floor, because I think players like or teams like the Miami Marlins that spend $40 million are just as bad for the sport as the Dodgers that spend 400. Another pushback probably would be a salary cap would create competitive balance. Look at the NFL, 32 competitive teams, massive parity. Baseball has the Marlins and like a team. What's another team? Marlins, A's. A's spend no money. That's disparity, that hurts the sport. But the NFL's parity isn't from the cap alone. It's from the draft system, the single elimination playoff structure, and the fact that the quarterback play is the most team amplifying position in the sport. Baseball roster size is 26 players. The fact that pitching dominates outcomes and the 162 game sample sizes all work against parity regardless of payroll. The A's have won divisions on $80 million payrolls. The Mets have spent $400 million and missed the playoffs. Money doesn't guarantee wins the way it does in basketball. I think that there is a lot of truth to that statement, but looking at what the Dodgers do, I do think there is a need for some sort of action there. But overall, I think that the MLB, do I want a hard salary cap in baseball? No. And neither do the players, which is exactly why we might not have a 2027 season. Moving on, we're going back to the hardwood, going on to our next topic. We've got Landon's List, segment where I give you my top 5 players in the NBA Finals. That's what we're doing this week on Landon's List. Buckle up. We're about to get into it. Coming in at number 5, OG Anunoby. If the Knicks win this series, OG's name should be right there next to Brunson on every trophy, every headline, every conversation. Because what OG does is genuinely thankless work. 6'7", 232 pounds, 7-foot wingspan, and man can guard every single position on the floor, 1 through 5. You need him on Wembanyama passing lanes? Done. You need him bodying De'Aaron Fox on a switch? Done. You need him flying the baseline down on a Champagny 3? Done. Brunson trusts OG with every important defensive assignment, and OG has never once said no. In the closeout game against Cleveland, OG had 17 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and 11 of his points came in transition. He was running harder than guys half his size in the fourth quarter of a blowout he could have coasted through, especially coming off that injury. Anunoby is quietly playing the best basketball of his career, and this series is the stage where the entire country finds out who OG Anunoby is. Coming in at number 4, moving on to Spurs player Stephon Castle. And I want you to understand something about Stephon Castle. He's 22 years old. He just won a Game 7 on the road in a Western Conference Finals, and he looked like a 10-year veteran doing it. Nobody panics. Nobody forces anything. He just plays winning basketball and lets the game come to him. Great professionalism from Stephon Castle. Castle went for 16 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds in Game 7 against OKC, the team with the best record in the Western Conference, and barely blinked. His assist-to-turnover ratio in Game 6 of the Western Conference Finals was 9-1. 9 assists, 1 turnover in a conference finals game. That's absurd from Stephon Castle. He is the reason Wemby Castle two-man game is the single most dangerous action in this series. Because if you overhelp on Wemby, Castle reads it immediately and either hits the corner 3 or gets to the rim himself. He's going to cause a lot of trouble for the Knicks, and I'm very scared for what he can do. Because as I mentioned, the supporting cast is almost more important than Wembanyama himself when it comes to the Spurs. Coming in at number 3, Karl-Anthony Towns. Back to my New York Knicks. Am I going to need the national media to stop sleeping on this man, Karl-Anthony Towns, because he has been the key in the Knicks' success in the 2026 playoffs. He has been more important than Brunson himself when we talk about the Knicks. Cat has been the most quietly dominant player in this entire postseason, and nobody is talking about it because Brunson gets all the attention, and rightfully so. But strip away the top line narrative and look at what Cat actually did in this Eastern Conference Finals. In the closeout game against Cleveland with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, 2 of the top big men in the East, Karl-Anthony Towns grabbed 14 rebounds, he was 2 for 3 from the three-point line. He scored 19 points on 72.7% shooting. He had 2 steals and 2 blocks. And he finished with a plus-minus of plus 25 in 30 minutes. That's absurd. That's the kind of performance that wins championships. But here's why Cat is specifically crucial against San Antonio. He pulls Victor Wembanyama away from the basket. Wemby's entire defensive identity is to protect the rim, shot blocking, contesting at the rim, being the anchor. The second Cat catches the ball at the three-point line on a pick and pop, Wemby has to decide, do I close out and leave the rim, or do I stay and let Cat rise and fire? There is no good answer with the way Karl-Anthony Towns is playing right now. No team in the Western Conference playoffs forced Wemby to make that decision. Karl-Anthony Towns will be the first. And he really forces Wemby to hedge to the arc, and that's something that Wemby cannot do, because when Wemby gets obsessed with shooting from three, shooting the mid-range jumper, it hinders his game. We saw it in the Western Conference Finals a little bit. When OKC forced Wemby to do that, it was not good for the Spurs, and I think Karl-Anthony Towns can do it perfectly. He comes in at number 3. And now the moment of truth. Who is going to be 1 or 2? Because it's obviously going to be Wemby or Brunson. Look, before I reveal who's number 2 and who's number 1, I got to say these two are some of the best players in the NBA. You know, Jalen Brunson has been an anchor so important to this Knicks team. Wemby making a championship at 22 years old. He's doing historic stuff in his 3rd season. But I have to pick the veteran over Wemby, and I'll tell you why. Coming in at number 2, Victor Wembanyama. I have to put Victor Wemby. I apologize. And look, the only reason he's not number 2, not number 1, is because I believe Brunson and what these Knicks have built. But let me be absolutely clear about something. Victor Wembanyama is the most singular player in the history of professional basketball. Not his generation, not currently active, ever. There's never been a player with his combination of size, skill, shot blocking, and shooting range. He is 7'4" with an 8-foot wingspan, and he pulls up for threes off the dribble in transition. He averaged 26.8 points, 11.2 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 2.1 steals, 3.4 blocks this year. He's 22 years old. That is genuinely impossible. You start to understand why people are calling him the alien. Without him, San Antonio does not exist in this conversation. In the Western Conference Finals, he came back from 3-1 down against the number 1 seed and willed this team to a Game 7 win. He scored 28 points in 28 minutes in Game 6 before he got pulled because the game was already over, and against the Knicks specifically. Career averages of 30.4 points, 14.6 rebounds. He feasts against New York. He averaged 31.2 and 14 in the last 5 meetings alone, and that number is trending up. The Knicks know exactly what's coming tonight. Every team in the Western Conference knew what was coming. The question is whether he knows it enough. So that's why Wemby comes in at number 2. And at number 1, the King of New York, Jalen Brunson. The 33rd overall pick, who made every single talking head who laughed at the max contract eat their words, one playoff game at a time. Jalen Brunson really has been a steal for the New York Knicks this postseason. Brunson's averaging 26.9 points, 6.6 assists per game. He dropped 38 points in overtime on the road in Game 1 against Cleveland, a game the Knicks weren't supposed to win, and looked completely unbothered by it. He put up 19 points and 14 assists in Game 2 and made it look like a pickup game in the gym. He joins Kobe Bryant in 2001 and Steph Curry in 2017 as the only players in NBA history to average 26 points and 6 assists during an 11-point postseason winning streak. And you know what both of them did? They both went on to win the NBA Finals. Right now, Jalen Brunson is the 3rd greatest Knick of all time, behind only Patrick Ewing and Walt Frazier. He ranks top 3 in franchise history in playoff points and playoff assists. 3-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, 2025 Clutch Player of the Year, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. And on Monday night in Cleveland, Walt Frazier, the man who invented Smooth, the coolest Knick who ever lived, was standing courtside to hand Brunson the Larry Bird Trophy. Even Clyde knows. 4 wins, 4 wins separate Jalen Brunson from becoming one of the greatest or the second greatest Knick of all time. And tonight, that journey begins. So there you have it. There are my top 5 players here in the NBA Finals. And NBA Finals obviously coming up tonight. And I got to give you my pick as to who I think is going to win tonight. Well, not only tonight, but the series. I've been really struggling on this. Not really struggling on necessarily who's going to win. But in how many games they're going to win it in. And I want to preface this by I might be a little biased. Just a bit. I got to go Knicks in 5. My pick, no debate. No co-host to talk me out of this. Just me, the numbers, and the conviction. Knicks in 5. First, the momentum is real, and it's historically predictive. The last 4 teams to win back-to-back sweeps on their way to the NBA Finals won it all. The Knicks have a plus 20.3 net rating through 10 playoff games, the highest since at least 1978. When you're not just winning but destroying, you don't just turn that off because the opponent changes. Second, Brunson in this field is historically elite compared to his company. 26-6 through an 11-game win streak. Kobe did it. Steph did it. Both won. I think that in and of itself is a reason as to why the Knicks win this. Third, the cat factor is underrated. I mentioned it already in this show. Nobody in the Western Conference prepared San Antonio for a center who can shoot threes and defend Wemby simultaneously. The Spurs' entire defensive scheme is built around Wemby protecting the rim. Cat pulls him out of the rim. That's a problem. The Spurs really have never had to solve this in this series format. Fourth, depth. The Spurs don't have a bench like the Knicks bench. Landry Shamet hit 4 threes in a closeout game. Deuce McBride got 3 steals. These guys do not have a weak length. Mike Brown has really been able to maximize the depth, and that's the reason he was brought in. And fifth, home court advantage. The Knicks go back to Madison Square Garden for games 3 and 4, tied 1-1. The Garden right now is the loudest building in professional sports. 20,000 people doing the Brunson chant. When has any team ever silenced that building in a must-win game? You tell me, because it doesn't happen. Wemby is extraordinary. The Spurs are a great team, but this Knicks team is a machine that has not been tested yet. And I believe when they are tested, Brunson will be the answer. Knicks in 5. Let's go, New York. So that's all I have for you today on Landon's Locker Room. Thank you so much. Going to be tuned into the NBA Finals. We'll be back next Wednesday with the show. I'm going to break down games 1 through 3 of the NBA Finals there. Maybe update my pick. Probably not. Knicks will probably be prepped to win in 5, up 2-1. Going into game 4 at the Garden. See you guys next week from Landon Popovic, live from New York. This has been Landon